I totally support the re-establishment and activation of both a business and a tourism advisory committee. Just for your information, I chaired tourism for the South Coast from Wollongong to the border for about 15 years. I actually was responsible for forming Eurobodalla Tourism in its infancy, and I regret that the situation that's occurred over the last 4 or 5 years. It is not correct to say that Council is not cooperating and operating efficiently in the tourism field, but the tourism industry has changed markedly, as has been pointed out and referenced. And a lot of the changes that we have made at Council in terms of tourism is reflective of the change in that marketing. So it's not as if there's not experts in there doing work. Can we do it better? Undoubtedly. Do we work with other groups within the Shire? Yes, we do. We have a very, very satisfactory working relationship with Narooma Chamber of Commerce, Tilpa Chamber of Commerce and Maria Chamber of Commerce, but it's very unfortunate that does not and has not been achieved here in Batemans Bay. So the opportunities are there in the future to improve.
Well, we definitely do need to get back to a tourism board and a business board, a tourism committee and a business committee. That is where, like they've said before, the brains, the people out here in the community that are at the coalface doing all the work are the ones that come up with all the good ideas. It's not the people that sit in the Taj pushing pens. They don't have the knowledge and they don't have the entrepreneurial skill that the people in this room do have. Saying that, when we were involved with a slow food organisation, we had the 2 Caths in Council, that when the tourism board was there, they were a wonderful assistance for us when we were getting, when me and Stu were trying to get that off the ground. They helped us no end, they gave us a lot of support. There is a place for Council to have things like that, but I do think there is a bigger place and we need to get back to what we had before.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mark, and I agree with the others about the tourism advisory committees. Mark, I'm sure you remember as well, when we used to be welcomed by Council and we had those constant meetings and the chambers used to meet regularly and the chambers used to meet with Council until Council walked away from that under the previous councillors in Council. You know, ecotourism and tourism in general is what's going to drive the future of this area, especially in those shoulder and low seasons that we tend to have here. We've got to get the tourists back down here by running events like some of in this room do, filling hotels and getting people spending money in shops. I've got an ecotourism lodge out of this Shire, and actually when we looked at doing that, we approached Council, and because of the walls they continually put up around, not wanting to work with us, we had to take it out of the Shire. And that's something we hear time and time again, whether it's Willinga Park or other investors that want to come here and do good things in this Shire, and they constantly run into walls with our Council. So it's all about how we can work as a Council group and get our Council opening its doors up, getting the community in there, but also getting those people that want to come here and do great things in this Shire.
Several months later, the Shire was enveloped in flames, and on the 4th of January, with the evacuation centre in Mayoral showground full of people, sheltering from fires, power was lost, resulting in the town reservoir being near empty and leaving the RFS and emergency service unlikely to effectively protect the township itself. If Councillor Pollock was elected mayor, what steps would he take to put the community's mind at rest that this kind of infrastructure failure would not happen again?
I think actions speak much louder than words. If you take Council's current, and the terminology is not exactly correct, but basically the greenhouse emissions reduction or action plan, Council's work is about 2 years in front of the targets that were set when that plan was outlined in the first place. Within the next 12 months, Council's energy requirements will be sourced 100% from renewable energy. The situation regarding the fires, we faced the largest peacetime evacuation in Australian civilian history. So it was an unprecedented event. We have taken significant steps to building far greater resilience in terms of power, in terms of power to communication infrastructure. We have worked with the federal bodies that are responsible for that to improve the safety and resilience in terms of any major threat in the future. I understand everybody's concerns. I share the concerns. We must all tread with a lighter foot. But declaring emergencies and using emotive terms as compared to taking constructive action to remedy situations, I'll always go for the constructive actions.
Everyone, thank you everyone who's standing to support our Shire. The question is in event, as in actions, I hear these word actions and helping. After an event like the bushfire that devastated Mogo, and so many businesses have lost housing, would the councillor support that type of thing in the future, and how would you support it? Because we haven't seen much at all from councillors. We haven't seen one. I think the mayor came 2 or 3 times to get some interviews. I'm asking you, how would you support a community like ours?
Who'd like to start? Okay.
I visited the Mogo community in about April or May last year, after the fire, so April 2020, just to talk to some people about what was going on. And I was dismayed about how little support the Mogo community had got from the council. And I heard stories, which I won't repeat here because I don't have time, about some of the things which happened there. One of the things that we need to be doing, certainly with disasters, we're not just talking about bushfires here, we're talking about other disasters too. We're talking about flooding, we're talking about storms, we're talking about all of those types of things which will increase as climate change takes hold. We need to kind of start to look at the small communities to make sure they're resilient, that they actually can look after themselves in the immediate aftermath of a fire, and that they are confident in themselves as a community that they have the resources available to them. That means the council has to support them. The council has to support the small communities before these disasters happen so that people feel confident and know that they have the resources available if they are cut off. The council needs to support them in the immediate aftermath by making sure as much as possible that they are connected back to the community that will support them. The council also needs to support them in the longer term in making sure that everything is done to ameliorate the effects of disasters which will happen in this community and have happened before in this community. So we need to be looking very strongly at working with the Mogo community and with the Dawes community and other small communities around to make sure that they are confident and that they feel supported, not before, during and after these events. And I think if we can do that, that's going to be really useful. We have a quite detailed resilience plan which you can read on our website about the types of things that we want to do in terms of making sure those small communities get the support they need from the council. A part of that is, of course, the councillors should be there both before, during and after as well, being what they are meant to be doing. They're meant to be supporting the community that they serve.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for the question, Richard. A place activation plan sounds really exciting, doesn't it? But I think that Mogo probably needed that kind of attention before the bushfires. And I haven't read the document. I've talked to a number of shopkeepers. Yeah. But it's attention that Mogo needed and all our small communities needed before the bushfires. Council's new document addressing climate and emissions is the Climate Resilience Plan. It's in draft form at the moment, and it will address and we will prioritise all of those sort of strategies that are there that will be put in place to make sure communities are ready for these shocks. Natural disasters, but also other societal shifts, things like pandemics too, the move to automation, the move to work from home that's bringing this exodus, we're told, of people from cities to the regions. We need to be on the front foot about a lot of these things, and although we didn't want to raise state government issues here tonight, David, Council has a really huge role to play in advocacy to state government, and we need to be ready for state government arriving on our doorsteps and telling us about the projects that are coming our way. Council staff have told me that they were caught with their pants down when the Bay Bridge arrived. They were not ready. Their activation plans, their waterfront master plans were not ready. And state government is a bit of a bulldozer in this situation. What's going to happen with the bypass in Mayoral? We're battling it over the hospital. There's a very big role for council to play to be ready for the challenges that the state government bring to us. 2 sets of traffic lights and a roundabout, is that the Transport for New South Wales sort of plan? Mogo's been asking for a pedestrian crossing for how many years? No pedestrian crossing, you haven't had enough fatalities yet. So here's the 2 sets of traffic lights and roundabout that nobody asked for. This is the role I'm talking about for council, being ready to face the state government when they arrive with these crazy ideas.
Richard, to you and the Mogo community, as a working journalist, I can tell you I was nothing but ashamed at the caravan that turned up to look at the spectacle that Mogo was suddenly on the on the map. I actively, in my journalism with the ABC and other Canberra publications, I actively prevented them from retelling the Mogo story. They don't understand the trauma of varying degrees that happened. And then, to make it worse, the show moved on and the weeds grew. The people were left alone and the trucks kept rolling through, the bulldozers came through. There was some support, thankfully, for the kids in the school, but there was nowhere for Mogo to gather. There was no soothing. We're in a pandemic and the train keeps rolling on. And do you know, the disaster resilience plan that was in place before the bushfires was inadequate. It still hasn't been rewritten. If we were to have another disaster, we still wouldn't know where to go. We don't have communication and electricity secured. Why there is a $70 million building in Batemans Bay without solar panels and a battery, so if we lose communications and power, we have somewhere secure to shelter. Our villages have not been told where their evacuation points are. We have let people down. We need information, we need plans, we need compassion, and we need the really good team of community support that this council employs to go out and help our people.
No question, we could have done better. Under the circumstances, it was extremely difficult. It wasn't just Mogo, it was the whole of the Shire. The Shire certainly took the initiative in getting together with the Business Council of Australia to get the temporary mall set up. Certainly the work that's now going on in terms of the Mogo activation plan, the length of time for consultation has been extended, and hopefully from now on we can get it right. I understand the frustration, and I don't make excuses for any inadequacies, but it was a very, very big problem throughout the whole of the Shire, and hopefully we'll never see it again, but we'll get it right from now on.
Well, I think we definitely need to go back and revisit, because like everybody says, that we did not do very well at all after these pandemics and after the fires and the pandemics. We definitely need to go back and revisit all these disaster action plans. And we need to do that with talking with the local communities. We need to go back to Mogos and the little villages where people did suffer immensely. The big end of town, sort of, the centre of the towns all got away with it. Nobody was really touched in the centre of the towns a lot. But it's the little outlying communities that really, really suffered. And as Karen said, they didn't know where to go. They didn't have places to hide. And like she says, they still don't even know it now. That sort of information should have been put out. We should have had that. The plan should have been written up and at least have a basic idea of what happens.
After the bushfires, I was lucky enough to receive the Urbadala 2020 Local Hero Award. But I got that mainly because I was the face of a movement by the community. You know, there's 250 to 300 people who stood up with me and put their hand up and worked tirelessly throughout the night, every day after the bushfires for months on end, to make sure people from Lake Conjola down to the border had goods distributed and made sure people had what they needed. I only say that because completely behind the scenes, Richard saved the Mogo. You know, me and Richard had many nights and days running goods around Mogo, and I can honestly say that he's never really been given the pat on the back that he needs or the round of applause that he deserves for what he's done for that community. And you know, I mean, the long-term support is key. You know, when COVID hit, we lost the mental health workers from this region. So, you know, the rebuild on this area, we've got a long journey ahead of us. We're going to start seeing that once we all start opening our doors back and we start mingling again. It's key that we retrofit existing facilities with battery power, solar panels to make sure we have comms and lights and power, and we have places for people to seek refuge if this happens again soon. I was part of the Mogo activation strategy, and that is, as Rob said, it has been extended. And the problem with that is the extension came because council wasn't listening. You know, Mogo Chamber and the businesses there consistently ask council constantly to change, you know, that plan for what they want for that community. And it seems like they're just not being heard. So I welcome the extension, but I hope this time we get it right.
Of saving a park, trying to save a community centre, and trying to get Mackay Park to be a vibrant communal place. One of the things you talked about was community assets and getting rid, you know, opposing selling community assets. But I want to be very clear about what community assets are, because those are not just our green trees or our water. They're the social cohesion, they're the trust in the community, there's the goodwill, it's our volunteers, it is our environment, it is our passion about keeping those things in balance. It's about supporting our youth and employment, it's about keeping businesses going. It's got to be a whole vision of what our assets are and keeping those assets whole and healthy. I've watched those community assets, particularly things like community given and bequeathed properties, just eroded for the sake of money. We mustn't have money guide our decisions. It must be a vision, it must be something worthwhile that we want to hand on to our children. So I'm asking the selection of people who have come here today what their vision of community assets is and how they're going to protect it. But one thing I also want to add is some very simple thing. We lost some community assets. They talked about not selling off community assets. If they weren't operational in the first place, they wouldn't have been sold. And the council has moved to Mackay Park, and the community centre to operational so they can sell it. Those situations can be reversed. So we're not just talking about not selling what we've got, but it's ensuring that we keep what we have, even by reversing some of our decisions, to make sure that our future is guaranteed as a whole and healthy community. So I would ask you what your vision of our assets are and what your commitment is to the broad range of assets, not just individual things. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Yes, community assets, if we, in particular, we talk about the community centre, and while council has offered all those groups in that centre a 12-month free rent at the new site, it doesn't accommodate for the groups that are there. There's groups like U3A that do an amazing amount of work in this community. There's groups like Meals on Wheels. We can't have Meals on Wheels serving meals at the new Bay Pavilion. It's council again forcing these groups out, pushing them into sites that aren't suited because they didn't write a good business plan or a business plan at all for the new Bay Pavilion. I was also a part of a group of local business owners when they announced this plan that wanted to speak to council about keeping the bowling club and retrofitting it as an arts centre. We had Terry Snow and Willinga Parks Architect on board. We wanted to keep it in community hands, run it as a co-op, community gardens. We had plenty of space for a 1,200-seat auditorium, and then we could have looked at how we kept the existing 50-metre pool. Again, council wouldn't speak to us and refused to work with us. It's the non-wanting to work, or they're not allowing community in behind the walls to work with them and not bringing us along.
It is a very common theme, isn't it? The council put the walls up and the community get left out. This is what we need to stop. And I think this group of councillors will get here. I feel confident that we will achieve a lot through collaboration between ourselves. We need to stop the Shire doing what they want, which is coming from the senior staff, having their vision for the Shire and being leading the actual councillors. We councillors, as representatives of you people, now need to go through and take your vision back to our senior staff and make them do the job.
I'll continue to look at every opportunity in a logical and reasoned manner. I'm not going to respond on a very, very broad brush type question that's been just put to us. You can't possibly generalise over the whole of the thing, but what I will do is always make a decision which I believe is in the best interest of the community.
We have land assets, we have building assets, we've all spoken about those. But we have people assets. It's dear to my heart as a leader and a committee member of many volunteer organisations with a family business in health and care. It's the people on the ground that want to meet together, that want to help. And we're now being locked out of our places to gather, whether it's from a lack of an ABN or the cash to meet, to have a breastfeeding mothers group, whether it's U3A, whether it's Meals on Wheels. We've lost our gathering places. In Mogo, the tractor machinery group, they said some of the blokes just sat there, just for companionship. And they've been asking and asking, they've got money, and they've still got nowhere to gather. So our people assets need to be looked after. We've got to stop monetising this Shire and utilise the caring, generous, community-minded people that we all know we are, so that we are a unified society that can heal.
I had the honour when I was the Community Services Manager at this council between 88 and 94, working with an incredibly committed group of volunteers. And I believe, gladly, that in fact many of those volunteers are still there in terms of the numbers that we have. Those are our important people resources and we need to keep them. But without the physical resources of community centres, of meeting places and so on, you will lose them. They will become disillusioned, they'll become, well, what the hell, we're not really valued. And they are valued, they are incredibly valuable to our community. So what we need to be doing is looking at how we make sure that we have the community resources to actually ensure that we get the people resources that will actually make this community work. Without those people resources, the community won't work. So, what do we do as a council? We need to make sure that we actually value those community resources, not as dollars, but as important pieces of infrastructure which actually make this community work. We need to be looking at it that way, in a reasoned and very rational way, but we need to be looking at it in that way. We need to make sure that we don't devalue community assets. We don't actually make them so that they become not very useful. One of the things I found at Mogo when we were there was we have a community asset which is a toilet, but no one can use it because the code isn't available. Really, we need to make sure those sorts of things work. And as you were saying with the machinery people, but there's also the woodies. The woodies at Mogo, they're once again on their own. And I was talking to the secretary of that group, and he was saying, well, we're basically the men's shed. And I know how important men's sheds are in terms of actually kind of maintaining community involvement with older men. It is really important, and that has gone. We need to kind of get that back. So we do need community resources. We need to be looking at community resources, as you said, in a very wide way, and we need to make sure that we do it right. And we haven't been doing it right for a long time.
Thanks, that's a wonderful question. And I welcome the broad brushstroke because it's the big question of what really does come first. Are we here to serve a budget or are we here for people? And the answer is people and community. And if without that, as other people here have mentioned, without community, we've really got nothing. Our community rallied so tremendously in the crises we've faced in the last 2 years, and that is our asset. Again, it's little things. Do we have spaces for community groups to meet? Do we charge them? Not-for-profit groups in our community paying to use council facilities? I think we can find another way. There might be a silver lining here to this era of council with the walls up, in that it's driven people to double down and work stronger and harder in their business chambers and their tourism chambers to get so many no's from council that they just say, well, look, we'll just find a way. I want to point to SHASA, an amazing community group, South Coast Health and Sustainability Alliance, who've run an incredible solar bulk buy program. They've secured funding to get employment position for someone to help all these not-for-profit community groups to get their ABNs, to become incorporated if they need to, and to just get that support that they weren't getting elsewhere. But council can do that, and we do need to move into the current times with council. We're well beyond a roads, rates and rubbish council. David, you were there when it all began in the 80s, the idea of council, providing community services, and we've just got to ramp that up and continue to be that for our community in partnership with all these amazing community groups that were always operating, but yeah, maybe had to double down in this recent era of council. So thanks for the question, because I think it's one of the ones that we have to address as a community. What really matters? What do we want our community to look and feel like?
Thank you for the panel. Next question, I'll just go to you first and then up to you.
Just a quick one. We've been talking about tourism and we're supposed to be the gateway to the far south coast. Why did you get rid of the information centre? To Rob Pollock.
It is not an easy situation to address, but council, the Eurobodalla Council, contribute well over $1 million to the tourism budget. A huge percentage of that went on the hard infrastructure of the Batemans Bay Information Centre and the Narooma Visitors Information Centre. And as a result, the research which was done shows that by far and away the market is moving more and more to an online situation. That's where having a presence and being active in that field is where most of the business is being generated. Unfortunately, whilst tourist information centres are fantastic local assets, they are no longer viable in terms of driving the majority of the tourism marketing and marketplace and decisions that people are making as to where they visit, how long they stay and where they travel within that. So it was a very considered decision and not an easy decision to make.